Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Exclusive with Mpoki Thompson. Today's episode, I think you can notice, it's a bit of a different setup in a Bajaj. But the conversation that we are going to have today is quite impactful. We are going to see how different development projects here in Tanzania are being supported by the Australian government. My guest today is the outgoing Australian High Commissioner to Tanzania, Miss Jenny Doreen. Jenny, welcome to the Citizen Exclusive.
Hello, and it's so great to be with you and sitting in this pink Bajaji. Isn't this incredible? Have you ever done an interview in a pink Bajaji before?
But it's exciting, and I'm quite sure the audiences would want to know all about this entire setup, and we'll get to that momentarily. This is, I would say, it's almost like your exit interview, because we had a conversation sometime, I believe in 2025, when you visited Tanzania. Your tour of duty is coming to an end after serving as the High Commissioner for the past 3 years. So we're going to sort of have like a scorecard of what you've been able to achieve. And on to that, as your tenure in this region comes to an end, can you just give us a bit of a highlight, an overview of what have been some of the most pivotal achievements that you've had in the past 3 years?
Sure. It's been an incredible 3 years. And the first thing I would say is it's a privilege to serve as High Commissioner to Tanzania. We have a really positive and long-standing relationship between our two countries. We work together in many ways. But I think the real highlights for me have firstly been seeing the country. And I've traveled all around the country and I've met people doing all sorts of amazing work. And that's been incredible to actually see that for myself and see where Australia is contributing to that work, either through civil society, so through Australian NGOs and private foundations who fund community projects, through work that the Australian government funds, like the Pink Bajaji project, which is something that we're very proud to have been involved in. But the really big ticket items for us have been the progress that we've seen in mining in Tanzania. We have been working with the Tanzanian government on exploration projects, and they are now starting to come to fruition, and I think setting us up really strongly for the future. And the other area that we've worked really closely in is agriculture, particularly agricultural research, and we're doing strategic, globally significant research on climate resilient agriculture, on using inputs like water and fertilizer more efficiently, and on improving nutrition. So they're really important things for the country, and we're really pleased that we've been part of that journey.
Okay, so maybe if we're to get into the numbers a little bit, you've mentioned about mining and all these other areas of interest, economic interest between Australia and Tanzania. And the investments, particularly in mining, is over $3 billion, and we have quite a number of Australian companies that are operating in Tanzania. Now, can you tell us what has been the most significant evolvement over the past 3 years as far as mining is concerned? You know, the extractive industry continues to see development from a policy perspective, but also some of the investors who come to Tanzania. Now, from an Australian side, the investment that you've had, what has been the difference this time around?
Well, I think firstly, we still have quite a lot of miners involved in mining in Tanzania. Over a dozen major and minor mining companies are here, and more are showing interest in being here. We have recently seen the first major new mining development in Tanzania in nearly 20 years, and that is led by an Australian company that's in gold mining. So that's a very significant achievement, but I think we will see more come on stream as they raise capital and are able to move from development to actually operations. But the most significant number, I think, for the country is the contribution of the mining sector to Tanzania's growth. So the country set a goal for that of contributing 10% to GDP, and you've already exceeded it. And Australia has been part of that story.
Yes. Now, again, beyond the economic impact, the contribution to GDP, as you mentioned, above 10%, and we are seeing agriculture, tourism, of course, those are the biggest contributors with agriculture, 25%, tourism at 17%, and then mining at 10%. Now, beyond those numbers, the social impacts, you know, mining industry has that trickle-down effect to the community. And we as the citizen have covered the impact beyond the economic, the environmental impact, the social impact. Now, can we highlight a bit about that? What has been the most pivotal discussions around, I would say, advantageous mining that has a positive impact to the Tanzanian community from a social perspective, but we also talk about the economic impact on the side of local content.
So this is a very complicated story to tell in a very short space of time, but let me just make 3 points. We all carry smartphones. We're increasingly riding in electric vehicles. This is electric, and we are using new technologies that rely on critical minerals. And those critical minerals have to come from somewhere. And Tanzania is in a very strong position to be a strategic supplier of critical minerals to meet those technology needs of the future. And that will benefit everybody. It will benefit people like you and I. It will benefit people across the country, but it will also benefit people around the world. And we need those critical minerals into those global supply chains. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I'd say is that Tanzania has made a very strategic decision to work with partners that will deliver sustainable mining practices, so that pay attention to environmental and social sustainability, that create local jobs, but also transfer knowledge and technology to the country, so that mining isn't just something that's sustainable in the next 2 or 3 years, but for the next 2 or 3 decades and beyond, and can be a model for other countries in the region on how to do this. And as Tanzania and other countries in the region start to think about value addition, that's also an area where we can bring international expertise to work with the country to develop that value addition capability in a really sustainable way. And the third thing is that wherever Australian companies work, they are doing things that support community development through jobs, first of all, through skills development, but also through providing community infrastructure, roads, power, water. These are all very practical things, generally in rural areas because the mines are in rural areas. And we see this not just here, but we see this around the world. It's the way that we work. It comes from decades of experience at home, but also abroad. And those practices are also coming to your country.
Yeah, and from the local context perspective, just to link a little bit more on that, because again, as mentioned, it is one of the most critical areas of investment from Australia here in Tanzania. The government has been very intentional in ensuring that Tanzanians get to benefit. So they're pushing the local content narrative, even from a policy perspective. However, when you talk about human capital and also service delivery, there's been a big gap where you find a big mining industry that wants to hire local Tanzanians in different capacities. They want to have procurement done here locally, but Tanzania lacks that capacity. What is being done about that? As we're looking at local content, but does Tanzania have the capacity to deliver?
I think in the long term, Tanzania definitely has the capacity to deliver, but it needs to build that capability as well. These are very highly technical industries and they do require technical skills. And your country is already investing in individuals to build those skills. And we do too. We have Tanzanians studying in Australia at master's level on mining governance, on mining economics, on a range of areas where they will bring those skills back and contribute to the development of that sector. But I would also say that there will be a transition period because while you build that capability locally, you still need to draw on that expertise from outside. So it's not so much about whether that local content can be delivered. I think in the long term, there's a lot of work that can be done locally, but it's about how it's done, whether it's done in partnership, whether there's still the ability to bring those skills in and deploy them, the technology and deploy it, the equipment and deploy it, while Tanzania is building its own capability to provide that. And local doesn't just need to mean local here in this country, but it can be local on the continent as well. So thinking about how the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement and agreements like under COMESA can harmonise arrangements so that countries can share those resources across borders and deploy them efficiently. That might create some trading opportunities for Tanzania in the future as well.
Well, thank you for that. Now let's focus about the pink Bajaji, which is quite appealing to look at. So the Australian government has been supporting different CSOs and NGOs here in Tanzania, and one of them is Our Voices Against Harassment. This is an initiative that supports women empowerment, economic empowerment, but also addresses a very big challenge: safety when it comes to the use of public transportations. And the Pink Bajaji movement has had quite an impact. It has helped a number of Tanzanians own their own three-wheelers. Now, can you tell us about what is Pink Bajaji concept and how is it impacting the local community, especially women?
Well, we're very proud to be partnering with the Pink Bajaji project and Voices Against Harassment for the reasons that you described. Firstly, this is about addressing a global problem of harassment and gender-based violence, but doing it in a very innovative and localized way. And so we've been very impressed by the strategic thinking behind this initiative. And I love the branding. The idea of having pink Bajajis traveling around Dar es Salaam is just incredible. But the real benefit of this is empowering women to earn income, support their children through school, potentially start new businesses, learn new skills like financial inclusion. And this project is doing all of those things, and I think it's strategically sound. I think it's making a real impact. We're hearing about success stories of women who are involved, but also the women are out there advocating for safer spaces. And doing so confidently because they're supported by a program that has focused on that and given them the tools to do that, but also given them the confidence to do that. So I think through this, and with support from other partners as well, we'd like to see more safer spaces for women. We'd like to see more women involved in the transport industry. We'd like to see more women confident to speak up about these issues in a way that supports other women to seek help when they need it. And we also hope that we will see more of these pink Bajajis around the country.
Indeed. I'm just interested in knowing why support this particular initiative. I mean, of course, there are various causes here in Tanzania and across the region that require financial support from development partners. Why Pink Bajaji particularly? What was of interest and how does it tie to the ethos from the Australian government?
Well, it's just a fantastic project, right? And it's so fantastic it's getting international attention. So it was featured at the World Economic Forum. Representatives of the Pink Bajaji project were in Australia recently speaking at the Women Deliver conference. We're all interested in supporting initiatives that are sustainable, that deliver real benefits for women, particularly economic benefits for women, so that they can support their children to go through school, support their families, be engaged in meaningful employment, but as I said, also create very safe spaces for women and children. So this is a truly exciting initiative, and when it came to our attention, we really wanted to be involved.
Okay, and I've had the opportunity to have conversations with different operators within the logistical industry, from the riders of different ride-hailing apps, but also the passengers as well. And safety has always been a concern. Now, in the Tanzanian context, when we look at the vast majority of commuters, Bajaji three-wheelers does not rank highly in terms of the number of people who get to use it. Now, the logical approach that I want us to sort of have a view on is that when we talk about the bus rapid transit, that's the BRT lanes that accommodates thousands of commuters on a daily basis, it's a challenging public transportation system. When we talk of dalas, challenging public transportation system for women, but also youth. You've started with Bajajis, which is a very good starting point. But what is the broader view in supporting now the majority of Tanzanians who do not have access to Bajajis, who use the dalas, who use the BRT lanes?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it really means that we need to have a broader conversation about how to keep people safe when they're using public transport. And this is not just a challenge for you; it can be a challenge in a lot of places. So sharing those experiences and looking at a mix of awareness, advocacy, policy changes that promote safety, and of course, funding to support implementation of those measures is really important. And if Pink Bajaji is at the start of that journey, if it goes some way to show that cost-effective interventions can make a difference and that they can be scaled up, well, perhaps it will have broader application. But at least we've started the conversation, and I think it's really important to recognise the role that Voices Against Harassment have played in promoting that conversation. That advocacy is super important.
Okay, now I want us to look at democracy and governance. When we had a conversation sometime in 2025, we were talking about the 2025 general election that was a pre-election season. And unfortunately, the 2025 election, they have gone down in history as being one of the most deadly elections in Tanzania's democratic process as far as electing a government is concerned. Australia is part of the Commonwealth, so is Tanzania. And one of the most important aspects of the Commonwealth is democracy and also good governance. I want you to give us your view, your comment on not just the elections. I mean, commissions have been established by the president. A report was tabled. We know the results of the report. And right now, there is the criminal investigation that is going. So there is that process that has taken place. As part of the Commonwealth and in relation to how you engage with the Tanzanian government when it comes to democracy and good governance, what is your comment about the overall democracy or democratic process here in Tanzania, and how can the Australian government, Tanzanian government be in collaboration to ensure that there is free and fair elections, but also a democracy takes place in this country?
Yes, I'm very conscious of what happened. Of course, I was in Nairobi, but I watched it very closely. Some Australians were caught up in that, and we had to assist them during that period. There was, it was a difficult time for Tanzania. And I think, as you say, there are commissions of inquiry, and they should run their course, and the recommendations should be taken very seriously. It's not for me to have a running commentary on the affairs of Tanzania, but we do hope that we can continue to work together in support of peace, democratic principles, freedom of expression, freedom, the ability to exercise your vote freely in a democracy. They are important democratic principles for all of us. And whether it's through the Commonwealth or through other forums, they are values that we hold very dear, and that I know Tanzanians hold very dear as well, and that I hope that we can continue to promote together.
Okay, now let's look at COP31. Australia is bidding to host this year. What is your view about Africa's role as far as climate change is concerned? Because we understand as a continent, we are not the leading polluters, but we are the most severely impacted. And oftentimes whenever different world leaders convene and they have discussions on how to save the planet, pledges are made, but not a lot of implementation is done. As you're giving out this mandate to as a convening country, what are you going to do that's a bit different, and how are you working with the Tanzanian government as far as climate sustainability is concerned?
So both our countries have a focus on climate adaptation and climate sustainability, and both of our countries are being affected by climate change, extreme weather events, more frequent weather events, and also the transition to cleaner energies. So we there are plenty of areas in which we can work more closely together to advance that agenda. We have the presidency of negotiations for COP31, which will take place in Turkey in November. We will host a pre-COP meeting in our region to put momentum behind the negotiations and to drive outcomes in the COP. We are hoping that we will get good representation from around the world at that pre-COP meeting. For us, it's also an opportunity to highlight the very severe impact of climate change in the region, but also to highlight our priorities. The fact that we do need to continue to work to keep temperature rises down. Currently, we are seeing some of the hottest temperatures ever in the world. The UK has broken records. India has very hot temperatures at the moment, far earlier in the year than they would normally see. The impacts are real, so we need to work together to keep the temperature rises down. We need to look at climate financing and how we make climate financing available to countries that need it most, and the models for climate financing, and ensuring that more climate financing is becoming available to countries. We also need to look at the energy transition and continue to work on that. And we need to think about practical ways in which we can advance that climate agenda. Everybody, particularly African countries, are saying we need to see more action on the ground. And I completely agree with that. I think that's right. There are many examples of good practice, but we need to really highlight those. We really need to drive progress on those, and we need to encourage the private sector, all sectors of the economy, to implement technologies and changes that will help us meet those climate ambitions. So that's what climate's going to be about. And I think Africa has an incredibly important role to play. It's 54 countries. It's a large continent. It's going to be a driver of global growth in the future. It is being severely impacted by climate change, and African voices are very, very important in that discussion.
Okay, so High Commissioner, your final thoughts on very key issues. I want us to start off by looking at the bilateral trade between Tanzania and Australia, which unfortunately for the vast majority, 90% in favor of Australia. So what can be done around that area to ensure that the value of exports in Tanzania, from Tanzania to Australia increases? But also we was discussed about the multilateral system, and you've mentioned about how the voice of Tanzania and broadly Africa at the international stage, when we are seeing the world having these geopolitical changes and also climate changes, and we're talking about 54 countries from Africa that are part of the United Nations, but their voice does not seem to have the same power as the rest of the world. What is your view on that?
So you've raised a number of questions there. Let me say firstly, on the global stage, the voice of Africa does matter. And we fully support a stronger voice for Africa in the multilateral system, including in the UN Security Council. It's very important because when issues are being discussed that affect you, you should be at the table. And many of the issues discussed at the Security Council are about Africa, so Africa should be at the table. More broadly on trade in the multilateral system, it is under strain. We're seeing that from a number of perspectives, but we need to remember, and I said before, the smartphones we use only work internationally because of international agreements. And when you send a postcard to a friend in London, it only gets there because of international agreements. It's not an esoteric thing. There are the planes that fly across the sky and land in different countries, that the safety standards and all of that are decided by international agreements. There are some very practical things that we need to do as countries to cooperate to achieve those agreements. Because without them, our lives would not be as easy as they are now. And that's something that we need to remember when we're thinking about, international cooperation. Why do we do it? Because it benefits us all, and because it allows us to deal with issues that transcend country borders. On trade between Tanzania and Australia, look, I think this is an area where we can do a lot better. Two-way trade is about 200 million. Our largest export to Tanzania is wheat. Education, which is something we're very good at, is low. Tourism could be higher. Export of commodities to Australia could grow. But there is work to be done, and I'm glad you raised this because our Trade Commission is here with me on this visit to talk to both government and also the private sector about what more we can do to stimulate trade. But I'm hoping in the future that we will see growth in two-way trade because I believe there's plenty of scope to grow.
Okay, well, High Commissioner, now as you are leaving the East African region, what next for you?
So I'll go home to Canberra initially, and it's been a wonderful tour of duty. But when you're away for a while, you need to sort of go home and reflect and think about what next. I also want to, appreciate the opportunities I've had here to have some amazing experiences to contribute to advancing the bilateral relationship, meeting incredible people, including the people who are working on this project, and seeing how their contributions is making a difference. And also meeting the terrific Australians who are here in Tanzania doing work in a range of industries in health, in schools, in mining, in agricultural research, uh, in all sorts of ways. And they, I want the opportunity to go away and celebrate that and reflect on that. So that's what I'll do.
Well, High Commissioner Jenny, it's been a pleasure having a conversation with you, but thank you for serving the East African region and all the best in your next chapter.
Asantini sana to you all, and wonderful to be with you. And thank you for doing this in a Bajaji.
It's been exciting. Well, that is a wrap for today's episode of Exclusive with Mpoki Thompson here on The Citizen Digital. Until next time, adios.